Hey everyone, welcome to episode 104 of the Fitness Devil podcast. Today we've got Robert Linkul. Robert's growing in fame in our industry for someone who deals with older populations. So we get into a really in-depth conversation about that, misconceptions and what we as trainers can and should be doing with them versus the myth of them being fragile and not being able to do anything. We also get into his story, how he came to work with these people, and he's got a pretty extensive and interesting history of injuries and health stuff, so he can relate to these guys. So you got to hear this story. We also talk about his social media, how it's really client focused. It's information geared towards his clients. It's not a lot of flashy stuff, and his philosophy towards what other trainers probably should do with their social media. We also tackle why it might not be such a great idea to spend any of your time on controversial topics like politics, social issues. So stay tuned.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. So if you were listening to this, hopefully last week you had heard us with Lou Schuler. Lou Schuler has the distinction of being the oldest person we've had on our podcast, so that we followed it up with a guy who specializes in training old people like Lou. We've got Robert Linkul here. He's the owner of Be Stronger Fitness. It's his physical facility, and trainingtheolderadult.com, which is his online entity. And well, he's pretty renowned for working with older adults. And we're going to talk lots about that. And you'll become really well known for his skill within that population and teaches other trainers about this stuff. I just shared an article today, which is going to be now a week ago for you listening, that he had published on Dr. John Russon's page. 10 Commandments of Training Older Adults, I believe, is the title, or very close to it. Yeah. It's fantastic. And on top of that, you're actually one of the most respected and well-liked people in our world. I keep banging up against your name. Before we'd actually met in person, we met this summer at something you came to Edmonton at the NSCA's provincial clinic that our friend Jeff Aker had hosted. We got to sit down and have dinner and watch you present. And you're someone that the industry speaks of with great reverence, as just being a generally really nice guy. So, that carries a lot. So welcome on here, man.
I told you,
thank you.
I told you he'd butter you up. Like, he's the best at it.
Totally.
And like, that's if you look at our script, like none of that's written. Like, I couldn't even do that. And the one thing I did want to get out of the way before we go, because I was like reading through the questions and I'm like, what is the proper term? Because we have like political correctness nowadays for like, because Andrew is like elderly, is like, or you said old people. You like went straight for probably the worst one. Older. You said old people.
I just stay away from senior as long as we're not using senior. It's older adults, elderly. Like there's. That's all. It's all open for me.
So senior is like the bad one. Like
and we kind of took that as a view from our clients. We had a part of our programming was called Senior Strong, and they couldn't stand it. We had like one of our clients had gray hair, and was doing a deadlift, and I was like, I think this is pretty badass. He's in the hex bar. And people are like, we're not seniors. We don't look at ourselves this way. We're aging adults. We're older adults. We're active older adults. And I was like, all right, I'll go with older adult. And it's just kind of grown from there. So I'm good with that.
And that's actually good to know. Because like I would have thought senior was sweet. Like I look right now, I'm like, I want to be like get that senior discount. But I can see how like that when you get there, it's like fuck off.
Yeah. The senior discount mindset is also. Something we'll talk about today, but it's like, I call it common practice. It's kind of what our industry already practices just because the people before us did it and no one ever really changed it. So it's kind of that same mindset. They just stick with senior. It makes you think they're old and they're, they got to sit down, exercise, all that kind of stuff. It lends to that mentality. So all about changing that.
Well, that's what we're going to get into. A lot of these misconceptions. And so let's start with this though. I got to see this live. You told us a lot about your history and kind of how you came to work with this population in your presentation when you were here. So I thought it was really important that you kind of share this because, well, as you put it there, when older people are asking you, well, how the hell do you know about training me? And you're like, well, I've kind of got the body of an old person. So you want to tell them how that happened?
Sure. Yeah, it all started when I was 28. I was a hammer thrower, track and field. I was sponsored by Reebok and pursuing the Olympic dream, and I ended up blowing up my back pretty good. I was a really good back squatter for my size, and just kind of had a regular day warming up, and out went my back. So I ended up blowing out a disc, L4, L5, and L5S1, and had a surgery to repair it, and that kind of ended my hammer throwing career. And the next year, I was training some clients to climb Mount Rainier and Mount Everest, and I had this whole group of clients who were going to train with me to do some local climbs, and started getting really sick and coughing up all kinds of different body fluids. Unfortunately, went to the doctor and found out I had a carcinoid tumor in my lung. Had to have my lung removed, 2 ribs taken out, my intercostals, my lat severed. It was a massive, massive surgery. I have a 28-inch scar at my side where this thing was taken out, and major rehab to recover from that. Not 8 months later, they found another similar tumor in my thyroid. Had to take that taken out, and that we thought was kind of getting me over the hump there. A couple of years later, my hip started failing, and just from years of lifting and turning the exact same direction for hammer throwing, just billions of throws, from right to left. So I just abused my body. I was not terribly gifted, so I just trained harder, and whatever everyone else was doing, I doubled it. I was going to stay relevant by overtraining, and ended up getting arthroscopies on both my hips, and then in 2016 had both my hips replaced. I had my left one dislocated 2 days after. They relocated and dislocated 7 more times that day, and eventually had to do the entire thing over again. So just for fun, I threw into wrist repairs from all my throwing days and a hernia, and I've had 11 surgeries altogether. So it is a unique situation, but it also gives me some clout when I get a 70 or 75-year-old coming in saying, hey, I'm going through treatment, or I have to have my hip replaced, or and I start talking shop with them. As I come out right away and say, I know what you're going through or what you're going to go through, to kind of establish that rapport and lend some credibility that I know what to do with them right away, that kind of gets me in the door. So I have a unique experience with that, and an obsessive mindset to whatever I was going through. I'm going to learn everything I can about this to apply to my people, in hopes that they don't have to go through it, or if they do, they rehabilitate and recover from it really, really well.
And just for our audience's, understanding, you're actually a little younger than me. So how old are you right now?
I'm turning 39 in November.
Yeah. You got like legit street cred in that realm.
I know.
I thought I was bad. I have 2 surgeries, or a knee surgery and a hip surgery, but I was told I was going to have a hip replacement if I didn't. And I was like, I feel old. I couldn't imagine 2 and then having them replaced, because that was what I was trying to avoid, was having a replacement. So they go through that, 3 times, I guess, because you have to have it redone. Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah, and it was just, I got to this point. I'm a big quality over quantity kind of person. Most doctors want to have you push as long as you can until you absolutely have to have this done. And it's like, I couldn't walk comfortably, get up and down off the ground comfortably. I couldn't demonstrate exercises. So it's like, professionally, I wasn't able to do anything I wanted to do, but also we were having kids, and it's like, I couldn't even play with them, Yeah. So to me, it's like, hey, I'm going to have to redo these things, I'm sure, when I'm 55 or whatever. And that's fine with me, because the next 20 years are going to be pain-free, and, I'll be able to do what I want to do.
Well, and that leads to how are you feeling now? Outside of the fact that you probably obsessively learned how to be in that new body, but are you doing well? I'm just listening to a rap sheet. I'm like, holy shit.
You sound cybernetic at this point. Right?
With all honesty, I'd love to be able to just say I'm great, that I know exactly what to do with myself and I fixed me. But, the surgery that I had to take my lung, they had to literally cut my lat in half, and in my intercostals and the ribs. I have so much nerve damage from that. Yeah. I'm in chronic pain treatment therapy. I've been in it for 10 years, and that's just not going away. And that's just something I kind of have to deal with. As far as my hips go, they work great. I can bridge, I can squat, I can deadlift. It's not heavy, but I can do it. And I'm able to run around the yard, and I can do yard work, and I can do all those things. And my breathing is better with one lung than it was with 2 that, with one that was infected there. So, I've got nothing to complain about, having to, have a world of being, involved with painkillers, unfortunately. If that's something that I have to maintain to stay alive, then that's fine with me. That's worth the exchange of not having the surgery. So,
and that is that realm of like, I don't think a lot of people appreciate it till they have to appreciate it, but you just want to be in a place where you can do stuff. Like, and that has like you want to lift weights and stuff, but like there goes the whatever 600-pound squat every week. When now you can play with your kids, and it's kind of cool to get to that point. Unfortunately, at your age, but there is something there because people are still getting hurt regardless of whether they're getting hip replacements or not. And it's almost like when you get to that point where you want to enjoy stuff, you really have to have a different outlook on training.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a big mental component for me too, because, you know, I went from being a 550-pound back squatter and being able to clean and jerk 320 and to not being able to do any of that. So not throw anymore, not lift anymore. I kind of went through like 18 months of depression and having to kind of come through that. So there's history to all this. It's all learning experiences. None of it's woe with me. It's just something that I've learned from going through, and it's something that I can reference to with a client when they come in and experience something. I've been there. I've felt that. I know what this is like. You know, it's we're always learning. Nobody's perfect. It's something to, experience and help teach and help learn from. So life experiences are good.
Well, and let's pull from that experience, because we had one of our questions, which is like, what should lifters, and we had 20s, 30s, and 40s, but like young adults focus on how to make the most out of lifting further into later adulthood. And what are some common misconceptions about working out into your 50s and onward?
Yeah, the thing that I've experienced the most, or the message that I like to portray to people the most, is that, Brett Contreras really got onto something with the idea of glute training. I don't know if there were a lot of people in the 80s and 90s that really looked at lifting and said, this is a muscle group that we need to target. They kind of thought, well, I'm getting it with deadlifts, I'm getting it with squats, I'm getting it with lunges. And, glute bridging was something they did in aerobics classes. And so when I went through my training experiences and learning, that wasn't a muscle group to target. And I overdid my quads and my hip flexors so much that, the weak glute component is kind of why my hips fell apart. So that's a huge teaching point for us right away. We have two things that we address with all of our clients, no matter what age they are, and that we want them to, carry throughout their life of practice. It's proper hinging mechanics and building glute strength. And then the second one is learning to retract their scapula, set their posture up tall, and building as much rowing strength or posterior strength as possible. So really, it's just addressing the posterior chain more and learning how to pick things up and down properly. And if they can apply that, we're good.
There's something I was going to throw in there, because you mentioning Brett is great. And it's almost something accidental, because the popularity in the glute training and the craze, despite Brett's passion for understanding how important it was for everybody, it really took off in a huge way, largely because women wanted bigger butts. Let's be honest. That is what brought it into the mainstream. And then you have all this interest in glute training, and Brett certainly is the individual at the very forefront of all this work. There are other people out there who are doing it, but that led to a much more greater emphasis on hinge patterns and mechanics of it, and the importance of doing this stuff, just like you said. So despite the fact that its origins are in sort of this aesthetic, vanity place, there's nothing fucking wrong with that. It's done a lot of really good stuff. And, I certainly am very grateful for what Brett has done. If anybody is listening to this and hasn't listened to our old library, or, Robert first and foremost, we have a great episode with Brett. He goes on and on and on about his frustrations with the way that he gets pretty ranty. He's pretty funny in this one about especially use of language like dysfunctional or broken or all this stuff. And, you just went through this laundry list of all the things that you talked about that you've experienced, and you're dealing with populations where, sure, probably the instance of some sort of, injury or limitations is probably just on average a little higher, but not using language to make these people feel like they're broken or there's shit wrong with them, that they're degenerative. Brett's really passionate about that, and I agree with him 100%. So yeah, let's definitely dive into some of the. Well,
you mentioned it. Like you mentioned, like even language, or like even talking about just being a senior kind of has this baggage with it. Can you kind of explain, I guess, let's go down there, I guess, in terms of your population.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, the common practice list that I kind of pull from, this is what we see, what most trainers will do with older adults. They don't want them to lift anything heavy. And from the medical field, we see 30 pounds. I don't know where 30 pounds came from, but if they're carrying groceries, it's more than that. If they're picking up a grandkid, it's more than that. So 30 pounds is a number. Don't go over that. God forbid you reach overhead, let alone press weight over your head, because you could get hurt doing that. You have to be supervised. Can't exercise on your own or work in a group of people. You have to have one-on-one training, because you can't do bird dogs on your own. You can't do band pull downs on your own, right? You don't want to do anything powerful, because powerful movements, you're going to break your hip doing that. You're going to hurt yourself doing that. And the machine exercises are definitely the most important ones to do. You can't stand up and exercise. You'll get hurt there as well. So it's that list of stuff that I get over and over from clients, medical professionals. You see it on magazine covers, you see it in health and fitness books, and it drives me crazy, to be honest, because when you look at like just a basic Google search of resistance training, the first 3 bullet points that come up are going through, bone density, increased longevity of movement, increased cognitive recall and cognitive function, balance, coordination, reaction time, fall prevention. You're like, we're talking about the older demographic. Why would we not encourage them to have this be the first thing that they do? And so it's like, yeah, you can cover some of that stuff doing machines, but we don't live life on machines. We have to get up and move, and to learn how to, transition ourselves through different planes of movement, and not just one at a time on a rail system, right? So it seems a little counterintuitive that the experts out there, the medicals that are, the medical professionals that are giving the advice of the common practices, we're actually doing a disservice by doing that. We're not helping our clients advance. And it's, to not be too dramatic, but to drive it home, like we're encouraging people a little bit to kind of die quicker by telling them not to do these things, right? So it's definitely, my life mission to teach other trainers, if you have to start with this stuff, fine, but get away from it as quick as you can and get your people moving in like the athletic mindset in an athletic way.
When we've talked, you go.
I was gonna say. So one of my clients who's been with me forever. She's unbelievable. She's 58. She looks like she's probably in her early mid 40s. She acts like she's about 20. And this lady, she like deadlifts off the ground 200 pounds. She wants to deadlift. She wants to max out deadlift every week. And I'm like, no, we can't do that. But she's so durable that she always wants to max out her deadlifting. I've got a video of her barbell lunging 100 pounds across the gym turf and back. So probably about 40 meters of that. Any given time she wants to lunge, she'll do 70 to 80 pound barbell lunges, no problem. It's fun to watch her go. She's an inspiration. All of her friends, family members, she just stirs them up and really advocates for them to get involved in fitness. And anyone who's around the gym just looks at her. It's like, holy fuck, this woman is a machine. Yeah. And yeah, there's just no mental limitations there. And I've never treated her like she was different. And reading your article, I wrote something about it. I've always trained her with the care to her individual capabilities, but I've always trained her within whatever she really wanted to do, outside of like, okay, that would be really fucking stupid. Let's not do that, right? Like barbell squat with a bow, standing on a Bosu, but it's low hanging fruit. Just don't do that with the 20-year-old. You don't need it. But yeah, like she likes to lift heavy. She likes to grab barbells off the ground. She likes the bench press. She likes to do whatever the fuck. So sure, no problem at all. We're just smart about how we implement it.
But the big thing is like, you're not playing into like, and we've talked about it before, that fragility mindset that comes along with a lot of these medical models, and even some of the training models, is like it's built-in fragility because they're putting people in boxes. And like you said, you almost want to avoid that mindset completely. And when we avoid things that are bad, quote unquote, then then what? Like, do they just die? Like you said, like we're just teaching them to like, hey, you're done. And that's so horrible in terms of like, you train older people, but like they can train well into their 50s and 60s and 70s.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a lady that I feature every week named Betty, that she's 92 and she's progressing. Yeah, I've had her for 12 weeks and I'm showing, side by sides of her first week to this week. And, she's doing 3 sit to stands in the time it took her to do 1 in the first week. And it's like, that's a functional strength and ability that she's improved in 3 months of training at 92 years old. So why would these 60 and 70-year-olds be like, oh, I'm old. Everybody says that I'm old. I can't move anymore. This and that. Well, because you don't practice it, because you're not trying to do that. And you're letting that like societal handicap just hold you into this. You're old now. You're not supposed to do these things. And I'm not telling people to go out and start doing wind sprints and, maxing their deadlift. Andrew, you're talking about your client, and it's like you are experienced for decades of training. You know exactly where to start with someone and go. but our entry-level trainers, new trainers, they don't. It's the two big questions I get from them constantly. I don't know what to do with them. I'm afraid of hurting them, and I don't know how to teach it. And I get that. You get somebody that comes in and they're like, I just had a hip replacement. I'm cleared from PT. What do we do? And you're like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. I don't want to dislocate their hip. Where do I start with this? And there just aren't a lot of resources for our industry to pull from that and be like, oh, here's step one. So that's what that article is about. Is, here are the 10 commandments. Here are the 10 things to feature and to focus on. And then if you want more, you're welcome to come learn more. I have a YouTube page and a website and all that, but this will at least get you started and have an understanding of who you're working with, what the mindset is, and how you can kind of get the ball rolling in here to where you're not afraid to work with this group. You're not afraid to challenge them. It's like you said, they're competitive. They're competitive as 18 and 20-year-olds. It's just a different way to compete,
Well, what I was going to say here is, and everyone who is a trainer who is listening, who isn't already pretty in tune with what you're doing, I got to say this. Guys, you actually should be absorbing what Robert's doing, because you're developing a library of information and filling a void that, fuck, how the hell is this not even stuff that's out there in spades? Because the people who actually have, financially, who have the money to spend on training is this population. They are more financially able to do this stuff.
And time.
This is a clientele base that needs to be served, wants to be served. And, there's a lot of people out there who just don't have that information. And we get little bits of examples. Like I was just going to cite a couple of people who showcase some of their clients, because you're talking about this. Like Chad Landers is great for this stuff.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
He just recently, sadly, he's got a longtime client who he had to announce her passing. She had a couple of rounds of cancer, but she'd also competed, I think, at a world level in powerlifting.
Yeah, she was a world champion.
Yeah.
25 years he trained her.
Yeah. And, he's got these long-term relationships, and people think about Chad as this relationship guy, and that's true. But Chad has also worked extensively with older populations very successfully. You think about someone who's, I feel like she competed in her 70s, perhaps. You get a 70-year-old plus doing powerlifting competitions. I mean, that's not for everybody, but that's pretty damn cool. It's definitely not a trainer who's, okay, we got to make sure you're sitting in machines. Or one of my favorites is when Dean Somerset posts, he's got one client. I can't remember how old his client is. I feel like he's in his late 60s or early 70s. And every year on his birthday, he's allowed to do a 1-rep max deadlift.
Forgot about that.
Right? So that's
like that.
He always does a video.
That's
of
cool.
that stuff, right? So Dean knows what he's doing with populations of all ages, people who deal with injuries and this sort of stuff. So he could handle somebody like that, no problem. So hopefully we'll see more and more of these kind of cool examples. I think Megan Calloway just shared a client who, God, I feel like was in their 70s, who was on rings and flipped over and did something fucking unbelievable. Just go check it out if you haven't seen this stuff. It was like acrobatic rings type shit. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
I kind of wanted to touch on this, so I don't even know if we have this in there, but you kind of mentioned all the good things, and that comes in the article. Is there anything like new trainers that aren't comfortable with this kind of stuff should avoid, or some of the stuff you see happening that is probably not beneficial for the bottom line in terms of training older adults?
Yeah, I mean, once the client is cleared of, and PTs, the physical therapists will probably give me a hard time for this, but I feel like the machine realm is really used for kind of clearing that first step. We have a baseline of machine strength. Now let's graduate on to our functional strength, our more full body free weight kind of style of training. So once we know they're beyond kind of that PT level and they can integrate into this, one of the bigger mistakes that we see is that we will pick sound exercises, but they'll start them kind of in the middle range of expectation of the ability, and the client either fails drastically, like they bomb, and now they're not hurt, but they've just had to be regressed so many times where mentally they're defeated. Right. And it's like, step one, let's put this bar on your back. Let's back you up and try to do a 90-degree box squat. Well, they can't squat with their body weight to 90 degree, let alone with the bar on their back. Right. So, okay, let's take the bar away. Now I can't get down to the box. Well, let's make the box high. Eventually it gets to a point where it's so remedial. They're like, I failed. Where if we started with, a 75-degree angle box squat, and then added a band to that, and then added a consistent load to that, and then worked up to a goblet squat, and then eventually, 8 months later, if you wanted to back squat them or whatever it is, then you got there. So even though it might seem very remedial and entry level to start with someone of the more basic components, look at these individuals as they're completely green. If you were going to teach me how to do any other skill that I don't know, we have to start with step one. We have to start with the easy things. And even though they're simple, it's progressive. They can do it. It's safe. You can build off. So a lot of times we just jump too far ahead too quickly because we expect and think this is simple. Everybody should be able to do this. Not necessarily with any demographic, but specifically with this one. And then the worst case scenario in that situation is they get hurt doing it. And now you have the reputation of being the trainer that hurt somebody. You're trying to reconnect this relationship and help them come back with this injury always looming overhead. So I'm a big believer of the philosophy. Like, I always want to consistently just slightly undertrain my clients because we don't have seasons. We don't have, I look at them like, I'm going to get 49 weeks out of the year with you because you're probably going to have some holidays and a couple of vacations that you program yourself. So I don't need to microcycle or even mesocycle off periods, right? We're just going to train. And if we can train 2-3 days a week, kind of just under that red line, we're going to just keep making, steady improvements. I don't want to go backwards. I don't want huge jumps. And then we have these plateaus and such. In the beginning, I just want to keep taking small steps.
You're saying that they're not reading Mike Isertel's stuff and they want to do like wave loaded volume and hit their muscles 20 sets per week and then kind of scale it up and down. They don't want that?
Guido and I had the exact same thought. I was going to say, like, apply, like Mike Isertel talk about maximum recoverable volume to like 70
year olds. Find that for them?
Fuck no.
Yeah, I mean, you got Dave Tate out there that could probably represent, that area a little bit more. But
Louis Simmons.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, the guys that have been trained in that way, it's a different programming mindset. That's more or less linear. But if you program in periodized weeks that they're going to get heavier loads and you're going to have some recovery periods, and like you can do that, but think of it as like a year-long plan.
Yeah.
Rather than a seasonal component or a training phase.
Well, do you think that there's like a generational thing too? Because I would say, like, I'm not the expert here, but a lot of those older people, they didn't grow up in a generation where they even cared about that shit. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, they don't even know what you're programming anyways because it's not common knowledge at that point in time.
Yeah, it was still a little, and I'm almost 40. It was still a little bit taboo for us to go into the weight room as like regular, just general fitness, be healthy. And this was in the early 90s. So, really, I mean, we know 70s and 80s, like bodybuilding fitness was a freak thing. Yeah. And then it kind of came a little bit more general. I really feel like it wasn't until, like really the invention of CrossFit that kind of got the general fitness mindset people, like everybody, to kind of recognize the idea of exercise, maybe not necessarily CrossFit style, but to be like, hey, everybody could be doing this, to where it's now normal to just go to the gym. That's the other place. I go to work, I go home, and I'm at the gym. And that's the other spot. So now it's finding, 35 to 45-year-olds and up that are having this introduced earlier in their life, and it's normal. But when you're like, 55, 60 and up, it's not a normal thing that they grew up with necessarily, of like, oh, I'm supposed to be in here sweating and pushing myself and doing this in front of other people. Like, they could be very turned off by it. They could be very intimidated by it. And it's up to us as the experts to kind of set that expectation and the comfort level of like, this is exactly what you're doing. Be confident. I'm with you. I got this. And to establish confidence right away with them.
Well, there's no other model to kind of give them, because like, if I think about like any of the success stories, like you said with CrossFit, it was like, oh, this person's 70 and she did CrossFit. But like, that was the only examples in popular culture where like it was a thing. And so I don't know, like you said, you can create your own model in which they can share, but it's just not that big in media, I guess you could say. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we see a couple of extremes. I did a Facebook Live maybe 2 weeks ago with my friend Jackie, and both of us, she had put up a video of a lady 70 years old doing a farmer carry. She's got, you guys have probably seen this, she's got like 45 pounds in each hand. She's got farmer logs, and she's dragging a sled behind her, right?
I did see that.
And
she's weaving side to side. Her knees are buckling. Her shoulders are all inverted. She's caved over, but she's, carrying and towing like 180 pounds with her. And so you see that example and you're like, what an inspiration. And I'm looking at that like, this lady's going to blow up if she keeps doing this, And so there's there's kind of your happy mediums in there. Go ahead, Andrew. You're dying.
That's a pet peeve of mine too, actually. And
Yeah.
like this one's a little controversial, and I usually stay away from it. We talked a little bit about this when we had Melody Schoenfeld on the podcast, and Melody and I saw it a little differently. Is you see also these outrageous performances of this young man with cerebral palsy, and you know a lot of people celebrate it, but then there's also a lot of other people, and I tend to be sort of in the middle towards the side of the things where I'm wondering just how responsible it is for that trainer, because there's a trainer involved in there, to be pushing these individuals, because biomechanically, what we're seeing is really, really bad.
Yeah.
Okay? There's some really scary biomechanical shit there. And so you've got individuals who aren't your strongest, most durable people just by the very nature of their circumstance, be it this lady she looked like she was in her probably late 70s, or this young man. And while I'm not going to turn around and demonize it, because I think there's something about like this guy wanting to do this, it's inspirational. At the same time, I'm willing to question just how fucking responsible is this shit. And then you're videoing it and putting it on display in the way that it's being done. There is some really dangerous looking biomechanics going on there. And just because someone is older or they have cerebral palsy or whatever, doesn't make them invincible to getting hurt doing this stuff. And the consequences for them getting hurt in those cases are probably a lot more severe than an everyday person who is equipped to handle the rigors of a powerlifting competition. So I'm a little bit more measured on my thoughts on that. I don't know.
The context just doesn't get described in those videos. Like maybe this, you know what I mean? And I think that's the problem with social media of any kind, is like, all the ducks could have been in a row, and that was a perfect scenario for that person, and the training was awesome. But we don't ever hear that. We just see that, and then it's almost like it's desensitized to the fact, like, oh, everyone should be able to do that. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I mean, I don't know if that's on the person who did it to kind of show that context. It's just a tough scenario in general.
Well, I love feats of strength. I mean, we as brothers of iron, like we all look at that and we want to see those things, right? But we don't want to see, Franco run with a refrigerator on his back and his leg snap in half. Like we don't, I had to mention Franco because of this week and us losing him. Yeah. But those things we don't want to see. But if you watch The World's Strongest Man, look at Shaw and Thor and those guys deadlift, they have really good technique. I mean, they're really efficient when they do their loaded carries. They're really efficient. Their presses are perfect overhead. Like, they're really good feat of strength demonstrators, right? You'd see Eugene Sandow up there with those guys doing that stuff. So to me, this lady carrying the logs and pulling the sled, if the logs were 10 pounds lighter and the sled was 15 pounds lighter, and she did it right, like she did it really efficiently, that would be more impressive to me. Yeah. Because I'm like, hey, look at what she's achieving. But we can look at that as experts and say, okay, we can respect 35 pounds in each hand. But to the average day person, they're like, she's carrying 180 pounds. How is it any different if it was 120, but it's done well? I'm respecting that from coach to coach much more than I am the total load she's moving, right?
And here's another important factor too. I mean, that may seem impressive to, younger people, active people, but what kind of message is it sending to people, the older adults, that we're trying to encourage that, hey, the gym is safe, that you should do strength and resistance training. And meanwhile, you're seeing these videos of some extreme, stupid fucking shit that is being done here. And I don't necessarily believe that's actually going to encourage them to get into the gym environment, because next thing you know, they believe, well, this is the kind of stuff that trainers are going to do to me. Good God, no.
Well, and people know what looks like shit. Like, you know what I mean? Out of all of that, like, even if they can't decipher from trainer to trainer that looked good, people know what bad looks like. And in both of those cases, it looked, maybe not the cerebral palsy, because I don't think there's a way around that, but the log carry with the sled, like, it looked horrible. And people of that age will be able to see that, and maybe that will deter them from seeing it. When they could have just dropped the weight, and it would have been very impressive. And it's not that it wasn't impressive, it's just like, where's the attention to having that responsibility to not show that shit as well? Yeah. Or at least explain it? I don't know.
I think in those cases, you have to approach it with responsible resistance training, because, again, in the example that you cited, the older lady, the young man with cerebral palsy, they really do need to be stronger and develop strength. Well, it is the thing that is going to prolong their life and the quality of life.
You've showed like a deadlift before, and like you're
extreme. Let me finish.
Sorry.
Extreme feats of strength with those populations, I'm not so sure that's such a great idea. I really don't know. So
I agree.
I was gonna say you've shown it before though. Like you'd be like this is a max deadlift, and like yeah, it rounded a bit, but like we don't do that this often, and like everything leading up to this, we dialed it in, and I've seen Andrew do that a few times because like shit's gonna happen at some point, but there is some care to be like, listen, she's trained for this, and it's okay. And I think it was that one lady, wasn't it?
probably, yeah. Like, so we're talking about my client Teresa, who is just this wonderful human being. She's incredible. Funny, she actually saw my sharing of your post and just commented on it. So I'll tell her that we talked about it in the podcast.
All good things.
But yeah, like all these 20-year-old women just see this lady and they're just like in awe of what she's capable of. So yeah, so we've got a couple of examples of her doing a 1 rep max deadlift, and so her thoracic gives a little bit. Her spine, or her lumbar spine, is completely straight, and she's able to lift it. And she's so actually, she's got more practice at this stuff than half the powerlifters in the gym. Just she loves doing it, and she's super strong, right? She can handle it, and she's always the one choosing it. I'm never pushing, hey, we should do this thing. She's like, no, I want to do this. And she's got incredibly powerful hips, incredibly powerful legs. Her quads are bigger than most of these young fitness competitors that are half her age, and she looks remarkable. And so this is something that she chooses to do and wants to do. And yeah, like we know that you can have, watch videos of Guido lifting. I mean, his thoracic is rounded. That's just how he braces, right? His lumbar is completely neutral. So an untrained eye might look at that and be like, what the fuck are you doing? But there's a difference. So, yep.
And there's a really key component to posting videos like this, in my opinion, as well, is provide education to what we're seeing.
Yeah.
If we're able to have, I don't want to just post like, here's Andrew doing a new deadlift. I want to show Andrew and like, here's what he could do before, here's where he's progressed to now, here's why we're doing this, here's the application. He had a hip injury. We've overcome that by utilizing this. Like, if I'm now a person of the older demographic and I'm experiencing the same issue that I just explained, I gave the problem, now I'm giving the solution, and then I'm showing kind of proof of the client that this worked. That gives them a connection of like, that's me, that could be me. I could come and do this, rather than just coming on being like, my client hit 220 today and we just move on. I didn't learn anything from that. And again, I might have that opportunity to be intimidated by it or turned off by it, where if I read about or heard about the coach talking, here's where we've come from, why we do, there's a lesson to it, then there's a whole new introduction to this content that can connect with people. And there's always something to be learned more than just what we see. I think that could be a key component for trainers, young and old, but really for the entry level trainer coming up, is explain what and why you're doing.
So that actually ties into where we're going to go next. Nice. Perfectly. Is I every time I have a guest come on, I look through their social media. I'm looking for interesting topics or things they posted recently, something that could actually be really good on here. And one of the things I really notice is your social media, especially your Facebook, is entirely about your clientele. It's entirely information geared towards them. And you've clearly chosen to do this. I wanted to know why, is your first question. And, any thoughts on how fitness professionals may be hurting themselves by where they're spending their time on how they post, perhaps unrelated to their work, or just we like to pick on the fitness Instagram influencer type personality. But any of your thoughts on that entire spectrum of idea?
Yeah, my kind of rules of my social media are, I want to show who I am as a real person, number one. So you will see pics and videos of my family and my kids and our property, our projects, because I want people to see that I'm real, and that I do eat pizza on occasion, and I'm a real person. I want to highlight my clients with educational content, but also it's not like, and you could do it too for $199 and here's our discount. Like, none of it is a sales pitch. It's just, I'm going to lead with the education of what we have, why and how we do things. And if people connect to that by seeing their friend doing it or someone with the similar limitations or goals, then I'll let that occur. I'll let that connection happen. And then really the third one is like, I don't touch anything political. I don't touch anything religious. All of that stuff, I leave it off. I don't do anything about drinking or partying, like all that stuff. I feel like those are all things. I don't do any of that. I don't drink or party.
Do you do that?
It's it was hard for me to get out of the hotel to go to dinner with Andrew. I was like, I could stay home and I got some stuff to read. Where I was like, they're like, come out and have a steak with us. And I ended up getting a crappy sandwich, right? My knife wouldn't stick in. That was one of my favorite photos.
Jeff could have picked a better place to sit down.
Yeah. It was, but I'm such a homebody. Like I like to kind of feature that as, I want to share experience, share that I'm real, and that, I know what I'm doing, but also, we can be very progressive in our nature in doing it.
Yeah. We also got to sit down with Lee Brandon as well, who
yeah.
I've got to reach out to Lee and get her on the podcast in the near future. And she was the first woman to ever be hired in a strength conditioning role in the NFL. And she trains the women's long drive champion of the world right now. Lee is just this energetic, like, wow, she's got like passionate energy. So she'll be phenomenal awesome. Here. She is a really awesome person. That was a really good weekend. I had a lot of fun.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I've said this before on the podcast. I really think that when trainers start wandering into politics, or even more than politics, like social issues, and we can often feel like, hey, we're on really solid ground, or feel like you've got the moral high ground. But sometimes those things, in modern, social media culture, these things are very, very polarizing, and they tend to take on very extreme positions. And invariably, you're going to end up pissing off someone who doesn't share your views, or even more so. And here's the thing I find some professionals that I know have made the mistake of. They've become activists, and they brand themselves as activists first before they're fitness professionals. And immediately, when someone really takes a strong activist position, be it far left or far right ideologically, I tend to personally tune them out, and I seek information and follow and refer and recommend and share the information of people who are fitness professionals first. If someone has a really strong bent towards activism, I just don't feel good about sharing their resources with the people who follow me and my clientele. It just, because that's always present in their message. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
They come to us for a break from all that. Like we're supposed to be the non-stress at work, the non-stress of the news at home. Like we're supposed to be the 1 hour of the day that's about them and about their health. And, you're in the gym hanging out and it's quiet and it's, you feel like it's awkward and you're like, how about the president and what he just, and now we've just brought all that in. Right. And now it's like you started this like stress-free, health-focused environment has now, been desecrated by bringing in everything else that was left outside. And so it's like, I'll even have to squelch it sometimes with our clients. They'll bring up something, I was at this dinner last night, or they'll bring up a talking point, and you can feel it in the room, people getting uncomfortable. And I'll have to cut that real quick, and I'll turn up the music and be like, all right, we're going to get, I got to get something going to kind of change that. Cause and that's who we represent in our circle of life with our clients. This is this realm, we're in that circle. They don't need to see that on my social media. I can have all those opinions. I can do all that. But, I look at social media as this is a way for me to reach my people. My people are my clients and my peers, my other experts that I like to connect and relate to, and ones that I can maybe teach some things to. What are they coming to me for? To hear what I have to say about the way that we train, the way we do our business. And hopefully I'm leading a life that's a decent example of a family man and someone that wants to spend time with their kids. So I want to showcase those two things, and only those two things, really, and do what I can with that.
And you end up getting in this weird realm, and like we've seen it with multiple people, is that you end up alienating your crowd of fitness people. But then if you have followers and you're posting all sorts of stuff, you can have followers in the political realm that don't jive with your fitness people. But where are you making your money? And where are you, like, if you really want to help people, how is that helping? And I mean, people can do whatever they want, but they don't work very well together if the end goal is a fitness end goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed.
I only know probably a very, very select few people in our greater realm. I'll use James Fowle as a good example. I mean, James tends to build his entire brand and image on a lot of this sort of stuff. And you know what? And he's got a massive following with what he does. He's very successful, and that is part of who he is, because he's not training individuals. Yeah. He's writing about this stuff, and he writes outside that realm. Virtually everybody else. I mean, think about this. You train older adults, right? And guess what? What demographically do in the United States? You're in the U.S. You're in California. I suppose so California tends to be a bit more of a liberal state.
Left, yeah.
But nonetheless, what happens demographically with older populations? Which way do they tend to lean?
A little bit to the right. Yeah.
Tend to be a little bit more to the right. So let's say you took a very, very strong left view of things politically, and you feel like, hey, I'm on the moral high ground, but this is the stuff that you are blasting, and your audience may, on average, or at least a certain percentage of them, tend to have views the other way. You're alienating your audience. And these are people that they really shouldn't care what your views are, and you shouldn't care what their views are. You are trying to help them move better. You're trying to prolong their lives. That's the stuff that really matters in our realm. And I often use the example of Cressy Sports Performance. And I mean, they have a policy. They don't talk about their politics. And my guess is they're probably not extremely far right? I don't think they're extremely far the other way.
Yeah.
But who is their demographic? The parents of, because it's not the kids who are coming in, the pitchers, Midwestern, all over the United States, the South, you name it. And again, demographically speaking, that side probably voted for the guy who's in the office right now, on average. And if these guys put a message on blast that was political, they're alienating the people who are paying for their kids' care. And that has nothing to do with their ability to keep these young pitchers and young baseball players healthy and active and help them get into the majors. Those things have nothing to do with each other. Yeah. So again, I'm just a strong believer. Stay the fuck away from.
Well, remember Mike? We had Mike Isotel on, and he used to get into political arguments, and he argued like at some point you have to really spend a lot of time. So like, what the fuck are you doing in fitness if you're researching all this stuff to have like a legit argument? But he mentioned that he has a company to run with employees under him, and every time he would take a political stance, it has the potential to blow up. And he's in a company where he is helping people and a lot of people with in terms of how much volume they produce in terms of the fitness industry. And it really made me think, because he's a very smart guy that can take a very political stand and argue with them. And he even had to pull back just because he had other people to care about. And the same thing goes with our clients is like, if you're that polarizing and you could potentially miss out on the opportunity to be in these people's lives, and that sucks.
Yeah,
but I think also. Oh, you first.
I think of Lou Schuler right away. You guys were just talking about having him on the other day. Like you definitely see some opinions there politically, but he's a writer. You know, like that's what he does, and he does find ways to kind of tie it back into the fitness world in some cases, but that's his profession. You know. Pete McCall, I'll see him do a little bit here and there. And like, there are some people that definitely have ways about going about that. But, you know, until you have that platform and you know how to do it professionally, I agree with you. You know, leave that alone. You can have your opinions and all that, but not during that hour, you know?
Yeah. Two things. One, I think Lou's actually toned it down since he's been working for the PTDC because he now represents a big entity. So I think he's conscious of that. And then two, we're dancing around being guilty of doing the same thing we're saying we shouldn't because we're talking about it. So
it's true.
No, hey, that's my fault. I'm the one who brought it.
You're the rule with
we're talking
politics.
about not talking about it.
Yeah. So let's go on TV next big. Dean, I think has something for you.
I think like in terms of this goes in outside of politics, but let's talk about trainer images. And new trainers probably believe you need to build, I guess, this image or this large following based on their social media, based on their views. What would you say to this, and how did you earn your reputation and grow your business in your realm?
Well, it really depends on the demographic you're working with, because if you're working with 20 and 30-year-olds, then your social media that's where they're going first to see you. You know, where the 60-year-olds going to Google my website, you know, like that's where they go to my website to hear about me rather than to, you know, an online resource outside to see what my reviews are, what people say. So you have to have a brand and more importantly, a reputation for who you work with, how well you do with them. And I think every little thing is going to alter the opinion of you. For example, you look at my social media and you see, family and you see clients and a lot of education. And we had one day where 3 of my clients were doing a wall sit and they had, I saw me turn around, and when I came back, I had my camera up and they were all flipping me off. And I was like, I caught you guys. And so I put that picture on, and I had a couple of clients call me out. They're like, this is unprofessional of you. We would have never guessed that you would put something like this on social media. When to me, I thought, we're joking. We were having a good time. I thought people would get a laugh. It's part of my reputation is that, I wouldn't encourage that kind of behavior or something along those lines. So there are things that you build as what people are going to expect from you. There's an expectation. I don't yell at my clients. I have a standard level of what, I think they're able to do. A lot of my clients say, they're like, you're like my dad. I don't want to disappoint you. Like I get that kind of reputation out there. And those are all things that you build and you experience. And once you kind of know you have them, you embrace those and you kind of keep going with them. So in the beginning, though, you just don't know what works with your demographic or what's going to work with your people and connect with your people. But once you kind of figure that out, really get good at mastering the idea of what you are and who you're working with. If you're working with older adults, own that. Be the best one you can. Learn as much as you can about that. Share as much as you can. It drives me nuts to see trainers that are doing good things and they have great content not share it. They want to get paid for every dollar. And you look at these guys. Eric Cressy puts out a newsletter every single week. There's so many guys out there. That you talked about. The personal trainers career development center. They put out newsletters every day. They put out content all the time. It's just sharing that content lends to the reputation. It shows that you're educated and you want to help and you want to put it out there for people and you're not just worried about the bottom dollar. So every little thing, all those little bits, your comments on pages and posts that you put up, like all that is being perceived by potential customers more than you know. And so it's kind of best behavior, but best interaction as well. And I think also people can tell if you're full of it. If you're not being genuine, they're going to recognize that. If you're trying to be something that you're not, they're going to recognize that.
I was going to say, speaking of that, like being in other realms, like and being that free example of and putting out good information. Mike Dola, one of our older guests and the CEO of the company I work for, his main advice a lot of times is like go to those places and answer questions and put out content just by answering things in other groups and being that expert, because people are always watching, like whether or not you think that they are. If you're that role model in that realm, it shows pretty fast, especially because it's so convoluted with shit and it's easy to see past that a lot of times. And all you have to do is be respectful and put out even just decent information. You know what I mean? And yeah.
Even just the attention that you put into your clients when you're training them. Mm-hmm. I was in a country club for 10 years and I had half my clients would start our initial consultation with, I've been watching you train your clients and I've noticed you're not on your phone, you're not looking at other people, you're not, checking yourself out more than you are. You're attentive, you're on them all the time, you genuinely care, they can see they're always watching. I had a lady that every day I'd walk in, I didn't know her name. She would look at me. She'd be on the treadmill and I'd round the steps and I'd wave and smile. And it was like 3 years of that. And she had a baby and finally decided to get into shape. And I was the first one she came to. And she was like, I came to you because you always waved to me and smile. And it's like, I never even spoke to her, right?
This is Andrew's language.
They're always watching. Yeah.
This is Andrew's like main thing.
I've got a client. She's a friend now. Same thing. I'd see her and her sister at the gym, and I just smile and wave, the old gym I used to work at. And eventually she approached me after a few years. Like I think it was like 3-ish years or so. And same exact story. And actually, I remember her having a baby then. She's actually pregnant with a child right now again. And yeah, but she actually trained with me for a while, stayed on with me, switched facilities, insisted upon following me when I left my old facility. It came here and she's a regular in the new facility. So she's not training actively with me anymore. She's actually gotten married to a guy who's really into fitness. And I taught her enough that she was incredibly independent. She got interested in like even more like strength and powerlifting type stuff, and he's really into that, so it worked out perfectly. So I was just laughing because it's the same fucking story.
Well, I was going to say it's the same message. That was Andrew's early platform, getting into a lot of this, like just his own in terms of giving out information and getting on this podcast was like that was essentially your main platform. Was like be a good trainer first.
Yeah, your story right there just told me so much about you as a trainer. Because not only did you train this lady for years that you mentioned through a major, not medical issue, but a health issue of having a baby and recovering and coming back, but also you changed locations and she followed you. Yeah. Like the average, and I think a lot of people don't know this, the average client stays with a personal trainer. It's 11 weeks. That's the average length, 3 months. And then they'll either quit or they'll move on to another facility, try someone else. So the fact that this person stayed with you for years, went through multiple challenges, went to a different location, that recognized right now, that gives me an opportunity to say you're very good at connecting with your clientele. They see value with you constantly. There's always a new challenge. Like they're not getting bored. That speaks more volume than, a certificate on the wall or the degree you have or whatnot. All those are important. But, that really tells me you're doing something that majority of trainers, they're not.
Well,
I feel really lucky in that because I at one point and I'm going to be very careful what I say here because there's some contentious shit with the old organization. I won't go too far into that, but when I knew I needed to leave the old organization due to a variety of problems in the environment, there was a lot of stuff, and there's some legalities in play even as we speak. So I will be very careful what I say. But I guess I don't know if they probably listen to this stuff. When I chose to leave, I played by the rules. I knew that I had a very, very loyal, stable clientele. My clientele was largely based on referral business, which I'd brought into this place anyway. So these are relationships that I had developed. So when I chose to leave, I didn't need to solicit. I didn't need to do anything. It was as honorable and ethical as I plausibly could be. I honored all of my obligations. I had, generated an enormous amount of revenue for the old company for many years. And then when I chose to leave, I left. I got set up independently. A friend of mine's facility where I evolved strength, and he wanted me to come over. And guess what my clientele did? Nobody turned around and went to another trainer at the old facility. No one wanted to. And the majority of them, the core, all came and followed. They were like, hey, reached out to me. We want to go where you're going. I want to keep going with you. These are strong relationships. And they came with me, and I had a pre-made, ready-made business ready to go. And while I couldn't count on that, I was fairly confident that would actually be the case. And, some of those people are still with me today. A lot of them are functioning very independently, and they've continued to find referrals and other things for me as business has grown. And a lot of old clients found out that I was at a different facility. Like, hey, well, yeah, we didn't like the way things were set up in the contracts of the old thing. Now we want to come back and train with you again. So I feel very proud of that. And I think that's the most important thing is, like you said, is a focus, attention on your clients. You got to be engaged. Stay off the cell phones. Nothing beats engagement. And then, of course, just being a really great trainer, having a great relationship with these people, and that's the lifeblood of your business.
Well, and none of that has to do with social media. So we asked the question about social media, and both of your answers are like nothing to do with social media. So so there is a way to do this thing without that. And like you said, it depends demographic, but Andrew has people in their 20s and 30s who use social media that it had nothing to do with it. And at that time, your social media was shit. So you know what I mean? Like when you first started, you were barely posting anything.
And that's kind of the thing is like, and it's hard to tie it back to social media. Is it's like it's hard to showcase what you've done when you haven't done anything yet. It's hard to offer opinions and give direction when you haven't directed anyone yet. So like you have to go through the steps, earn the clients, kind of pay your dues to hit a local term with it, and start to establish who you are locally before you're going to start branch out to start inviting outside consumers and eventually, onto a social platform to offer even more. It's the progression of the business. That's kind of how it's done. And until you start actually doing something, and you have proof that it's working, you don't have much to say or to showcase. Now you're just talking.
Well, and I'll correct myself. Andrew's Facebook was awesome. It was his Instagram. You're probably like, fuck you, dude.
I never had anything on Instagram.
But you did have Facebook, which I would say does play well to like a little bit older. I
think writing on Facebook is actually something that's really important. And I have been doing it for years as a trainer. I post a lot of client lifting videos and stuff like that. And I remember an old friend, I don't know if I told the story before, but an old buddy of mine who I got hired with the old company, he had asked the director, hey, what are we allowed to do? What are we allowed to post on social media? And then the guy just paused and he's like, well, we only have 2 trainers in the company who actually post anything on social media. And I was one of them, and Dean Somerset's the other one. And so then he was pretty much told, go ahead, you're welcome to. And it was something that so many trainers at the time failed to utilize. Now, obviously, I think most everybody's on board with this stuff. There's very few trainers who don't at least have some sort of presence, but a lot of them just relied on having business sold for them at the front desk. Some of them were very, very good at referral business anyway, so they're able to sustain themselves that way. But no, I think writing for social media is important, and it was that practice for many years that led to writing formal articles on my website, which soon after led to me being invited to write for T Nation and more cool opportunities. It's certainly where this podcast is able to come from. So I always encourage fitness professionals as much as possible to share their thoughts and ideas on their social media. And one of the best resources is your experience with your clients. There's nothing wrong with carrying a notepad, or I use a tablet in the notes section. If someone says something, shit, there's a great idea for an article. Or sometimes they just say something ridiculous, and I'm like, okay, I got to post that. So one of my clients yesterday is talking about, she's a Group X instructor, and she's talking about wanting 3-dimensional bums to the people that she works with. She wants 3D bums, right? Like they want to develop a 3D butt. And she's like, not a pointy butt, but I want a 3D butt. So I actually posted that yesterday and tagged her.
Is that a thing? Like, isn't we're all in 3D?
Well, I mean, come on, let's be honest. You see some 2-dimensional butts on humans walking around, right?
So she wants she wants a voluptuous butt.
Back to what we're talking about with bread and everything. Women want 3-dimensional butts. So anyway, moving on.
So you're gonna write an article? Like let's go down this.
Oh,
Are you writing an article? Are you throwing this one up to Robert to do?
Yeah, here's your next article. 3D
There we go.
3D for the 60+ crowd.
3D.
Almost every hour, you have somebody that'll ask a question or they'll make a comment that could be a education post or an article or something. And I totally hear you. What one of these will come up. You can write them down and keep track of them. And it was, I've seen. I forget his name right now. I'm blanking on it, but he wrote a newsletter every single day for 365 days, and then put it all together and made a book out of it. It's the personal trainer's calendar handbook or something like that. I've got it sitting on my bedside, and I'm blanking on his name, but it's great. It's like every day. It's one of the calendars you rip off the Far Side cartoon. It's like something educational for trainers. I had a client that asked me this, and you're on to the next one each day. There's always something that you can, take from your clientele and teach them and share that out. And next thing you know, if you do that daily, you got a book at the end of the year. It can be that simple.
Totally. And I was having this conversation recently with a good friend of mine. We had her recently on the podcast, Savon Fagan, and she's trying to, create the time and effort to put together an informational product. And, an informational product is really just a more formal collaboration of exercise demonstration videos or, your writing and your thoughts. And if you actually plan this stuff out, like you just said, you can actually on a daily basis, like she was talking about the challenge of creating daily information on social media, writing articles, and also finding the time to create a product where you could actually probably do all that as one. Because a lot of this information we can create can be multi-purpose. You create a video. Like I've recently been shooting a library of exercise videos for my online clients in my YouTube, which I'm going to start putting out more. And so you can take smaller fragments of those videos and they can become Instagram videos and they can be doubled.
You made a blooper video and then everyone else
I just posted my blooper video that got a great
before that, what the hell was it a blooper of? Like you didn't have the base. Is that what it was? Because I didn't quite understand it.
I was waiting for another one and another one. And
what happened?
It was just one. Christian Thibodeau tagged me in a video of these things. Christians are way better because Christian, he seems all sort of serious and severe, and then you realize what a goofy guy he is. But so you can then purpose that into your story on Instagram and if you want to be on Snapchat, I think Snapchat's kind of dead, or not a really good vehicle for what we do.
It's
but you can do the same thing on Instagram and you can do it on Snapchat. And meanwhile, it is YouTube stuff already. And there's no reason why you can't actually do one thing and then purpose it into several places.
Yeah, connect it over and over. I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't
if
think
you're struggling
Robert
with creating all these things and finding the time for it, just think about this stuff. It's not a bad strategy.
Robert's not going to be the Snapchat chainer. I don't think.
No, I'm not.
That's you're lost in that world.
I'm wondering if your 60 somethings are sending each other inappropriate
Snapchats.
Probably not.
I don't think so. No, I can honestly tell you I've never Snapchatted or even seen the app. So that's not us.
I did it for 1 week. It was awful. And that's how I knew I've aged a bit because I can keep up with newer stuff and I'm losing it now. Now it's just I like my Facebook and Instagram, but I get nothing else.
I keep it simple.
Yeah, nothing else. Given the book one, man.
Yeah,
you obviously read. I hope.
Probably
yes.
Probably technical manuals, but we every once in a while we'll ask someone this. I'm like, oh well, I gotta read, but here's some research study. I'm like, facepalm, and God, give us something that's
all the
I'm not gonna go and
researchers do
read
that.
some random research for fun. That's just not my thing.
Literally every PhD does
But
that.
do you have anything that you've read that really, really spoke to you? You thought was an incredible book. You think that anyone in general should read, certainly fitness professionals, but just was influential.
Dan John. I cannot stress him enough. My first read of his, I do the audiobooks. I listen. I have a 40-minute commute. Yeah. So I listen to that. And the first one I heard of his was Now What? And he talked about shark habits and, simple things all the way down to where he's like, I never have to go to the dentist because I keep flossers in my car while I'm driving. And I've got a huge bag of flossers in my car. I'm like, that's genius, right? All these little things of these efficiencies. And he just talks about, his new one is 40 years with the whistle. And it just goes beyond X's and O's. It goes into life values and how, we are, if you're working with youth, you're examples for them as they grow up. You're more than just a coach. If you're working with older adults, you're, maybe not necessarily taking the place of, but a lot of these clients, they're widowers, they're widows, they've lost people or losing people, and now you're a new addition you're a new person to their circle, someone they look forward to seeing that they value. And so, it's just a little bit deeper content. He's super funny. The audios are great because it's him reading it. It's not someone else reading it. So it's more like him telling you stories than it is him actually reading his book. I mean, I love his content. It's so relatable. Plus, he was a thrower, and he's had cancer, and he's had hip replacements. So I'm like, dude, are you my dad? Like, it really connects from.
Is that you?
That's true. You're Dad John 2.0. I never clued in on that.
Yeah.
Dad is amazing. He's fun to listen to on podcasts because you kind of get him a little more off the cuff, and he's a great storyteller, phenomenal storyteller, and he's a major influence on the thinking of, I guess, our generation, the fitness industry, because he's that kind of generation slightly before. I've read, I think, Never Let Go, and
Never Let Go is great.
I've read 2 of his books, so I'm going to actually put those other ones right at the top of the list because I didn't read 40 Years of the Whistle.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
And I think any trainer will benefit from listening to his stuff.
He's got another one called Mass Made Simple. And then he's got a 24-week program where he does talk X's and O's, but he talks about why. I'm big on why. Like I want to know. It's not just follow this. It'll cookie cut you to what you want. Like it's full detail explanation. So I really enjoy that. I do, not to keep plugging Lou, but Lou and Alan Cosgrove, their New Rules of Lifting. Yep. The original one that they did was the whole thing that got me going on like, we do need to have a blueprint for how we're doing this. Like we don't just pick stuff every day, so gets a little technical, but it's still life application based. I learned a lot there. And then, I do, I love the NSCA, and I know they have all their research stuff, but they also have like their personal training journal, which is a little bit more like, let's talk about how we're applying all this stuff. And I get a lot more from that than here's all the research we did. And we had the 12 studies and the subjects and the placebo. Like, just tell me the cliff notes of that and then how I can apply it to my people. I don't want to do the research. I don't want to read about the research. I want to know what you got from it and how I can use it. And then I can start to have more experiences from there.
I really like that too. And this is the reason why I follow people like Dr. Mike Isertel, Brett Contreras, and so many of the other people. Eric Helms is a good example. There's many others.
Great
They're the guys reading the research. They're the guys who are reading digesting it, and packaging it to us in the Coles Notes version so that we can take from it.
They like that. They enjoy that. Let them do it.
And they go to school to learn how to research. Like that's half the fucking thing. Like it's actually very complicated to you can just open up a study, but there's like metrics that like don't make sense if you don't understand it. So it's useless. It's not useless, but it's hard.
I would rather watch 2 of my favorite presenters are Greg Nuckols and James Krieger. And
I'd rather do a lot of things other than read
for such a little man. James Krieger has a powerful voice and a commanding presence when he's got a room. You're
call him a little man.
He's not that big.
You can't say that. The way you said it too was like he's just this little man.
But you're a giant, so that everybody's little to you.
Pretty much. I mean, one year we went.
That was such a backhanded compliment. I gotta tell him that.
Well, we don't like to point out 2 years ago at the not this past year, the year before at the Kedzie Fitness Summit. I'm hanging out there looking around. Jay Ashman's lost 10 pounds. I've gained 10 pounds. Like, cool, and biggest guy there. And we look back, and here's Stan Efferding just sitting quietly, taking it all in. It's like, oh fuck, right? all 275 a Stan just felt like a tree.
I would say, like, I know I don't want to get too much on how big you are, but like, you didn't put the work in that Stan put in. So like, you're just big for being big. Stan's big. He's a big guy, but he's also put the work in. Like you don't work out as hard as Stan. No fucking way. Sorry.
Oh
no, he's
Stan wants like talking about. He's massive. Look at that guy.
You do not put that much work in.
IFBB pro.
He puts in a lot of work.
Like he works out twice as much as you. And he works out twice as much as you, guaranteed.
I love how you bust him on everything.
Can you realistically say that you work out as much as Stan? Like
I never claimed to.
Okay, sure.
Well, Stan's also even older than I am. Jesus, he's got to have at least 10, 12, 15 years. No, I don't think
that's true.
10 or 12 years.
You know what? Yeah, if you spend your 40s like Stan did, I'll give you props. Could you imagine? You'd be so big. Man, this is like the perfect because like you're into you're like literally into the realm of like what we're talking about 50s
Robert,
pretty soon.
We're gonna have to get you back because this is a lot of fun.
Andrew's getting older, so like the older he gets, like we need you to come back to like Andrew. Don't be doing this shit.
You
like,
bet. You bet.
I bet you, Robert, you had no idea what you were in for because, like, a lot of our guests, some of our guests have heard our podcast, some have not, so they have no context. They just kind of hear about things, right? So, I mean, we try to be reasonably professional, but it's definitely not. Oh, what are the best ways to lose fat while maintaining lean muscle mass, or what are your 5 favorite glute training exercises, and like in technical detail? Hell no. We got to have some fun with this stuff because you can get that stuff anywhere.
I hear you. I enjoyed it. It was fun to be able to be off the cuff a little bit and just kind of talk shop, but talk life too. So,
yeah. And before you leave, so we just trashed social media, how none of your audience actually cares about it. But if you're a trainer or even someone below their 50s, where can they find you online? Where's the best place to get all your stuff?
Well, Andrew mentioned our website, trainingtheolderadult.com. And then if you find me on Facebook, I do a lot of stuff there. Instagram, I feature a lot of stuff there. Just getting involved with Dr. John Russin, the article that came out today, and hoping to do more things with him. The Functional Aging Institute, FAI, I speak at their event every year and produce some content with them. And then just locally here in Sacramento, I always invite people to come to the gym, come hang out. If you're ever taking a vacation up to San Francisco, anything like that, I mean, we're an hour and a half away. So come out, get a lift, come hang out, talk shop. We show you around and maybe teach you a couple of things you can do here and there. I'm always happy and so in love with this industry and how we all connect and we all speak the same language and have the ultimate intention to work with people, but just all in our own ways. It's like offensive linemen and throwers. They talk about food and working out, and it's like it doesn't matter what team you're on. You just kind of slide right into the group and start chatting. That's the best part of our industry.
Wonderful. Now, again, we appreciate having you on. I think I made it pretty clear that you're someone that I feel like the fitness professionals, the emerging young new fitness professionals of our industry, even established people should be following, should be absorbing what you're doing because I do believe you're the first person who's really formalized a lot of this knowledge in one place about the older demographic, right? We know people dabble and we know people are posting about it, but you're really coalescing all into a place, a website, and all your videos. So guys, give Robert a follow. I can't say enough about it. And then go read that article too. So it'll be about a week old by the time everybody hears this podcast. And you can find it on John Russin's site. If you're, on my social media, I shared it on my Facebook.
Thank you.
Robert it's on yours.
It's all over already. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Savon's share it.
At this point, blew the fuck up for anyone listening. It's the article.
It's good.
I put a lot of time into it, and there's the 10 commandments are there, but it's like I've got a video clip to go with each one. It's something I really wanted to be able to have people say, like, I learned a lot from this. I can apply it right away. So I put a lot of work into it. I'm proud of it and really happy to share it with everyone.
Great. Cool. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you all very much.
Guido, any parting shots?
Yeah, you're definitely in his demographic. Peace.
Shut up and sit down.